Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game Mess. So, Tarkin, it seems like every 10 to 14 days, I'm going to be covering the improvements to PlayStation 5 emulation. Because even 3 months ago, if you said PlayStation 5 emulation, absolutely nobody believed it was actually possible. But now with both SharpEmu as well as KyTy PS5, we have more improvements, more games showing signs of life, and I really do feel like in the next 3 to 4 months, you'll be playing at least one 3D game on one of these emulators. Because honestly, Sony basically threw the gauntlet down when they said we're taking away discs, and now even sending out new end user license agreements saying that you're only licensing a game, you don't actually own it when you pay money. Even if the button on the PlayStation 5 store says buy, it should say rent. And now the community is basically trying to figure out a way to make these games playable for all time after Sony finally shuts down the PlayStation 5 server one day and takes your game licenses away. It is a very scary future, and Sony definitely wants that so they can control the entire market, but fans and developers out there said, hold my high life, we're going to figure something out. And what you're watching here is a previous video where we're going over the Demon's Souls actual remake, and we're going to be moving back into that in just a moment from a newer capture. And just so you know, everyone's footage here is credited. There's links in the description below, or it's on the PlayStation 5 emulation server. And definitely go to these channels, give them a like and subscribe, and leave a comment saying VGE sent me, because I always think we should grow as many channels as we possibly can. That way everyone gets a little bit of press. You'll see here in the Demon's Soul FMV, definitely running a lot faster, getting to 60 frames per second. Of course, yes, this is video, not into gameplay. There's still a lot of work going on the in-engine stuff. But the fact that this even works, let alone gets into the character selection screen, which you'll see in just a moment, is night and day different than when we first started talking about this, where you could get this FMV to run maybe like 1 to 2 frames per second, and it would crash in about the first 10 seconds. This is just absolutely speedrunning the development of what a PlayStation 5 emulator can be, and I am letting it go to black screen so you know exactly how fast or slow it is running. As the Demon's Souls logo comes up here, you're going to see press any button, and it's going to get into new game and the character selection screen. From there it freezes, but basically it is getting a lot closer. Moving over to Friend Game TV's capture here from the PlayStation 5 Discord, you're going to see Grand Theft Auto 5 is getting into the menu and trying to load up. And honestly, even though there's a lot of different ways to play Grand Theft Auto 5, obviously, there is another Grand Theft Auto coming out soon, and people always make the joke about emulating it on PC before it actually even releases on PC. Because Rockstar is definitely doing a lot of weird things when it comes to Grand Theft Auto 6, basically making you pre-order what amounts to nothing but a download, and then keeping it away from PC for some indeterminate period of time. And honestly, the entire Grand Theft Auto 6 rollout fiasco has been an absolute mess, and it really goes to show that the era of actually owning games is basically completely dead at this point in time, at least with Sony. And I know a lot of times people see these little introductory sequences in emulation and think of themselves, well, it's not actually getting into the game yet, so how exciting can it possibly be? I totally get it, it's not the most exciting footage, but what it's showing is you are getting very close to getting in-engine, and that is maybe one of the hardest parts when you're actually trying to make a new emulator, is getting the game to boot, getting into the title sequence, and then trying to load in. But let's move over to something like Beyond Good and Evil here from Charlie33. Again, channel link in the description below. This is another one that is showing a decent amount of signs of life, and that in and of itself is impressive. You will see here that it is running. You see that frame rate at the top left hand corner, kind of hovering around 30 to 20 frames per second. And again, I know this isn't a quote-unquote native PlayStation 5 game, because of course it is a re-release of a classic game, but it is still showing that PlayStation 5 emulation is absolutely a viable kind of thing, and I feel like maybe in 6 months to a year, you're going to be playing some games on it. Now, of course, emulators take years to develop, not months, and even though we've seen a lot of fast improvement on SharpEmu as well as KyTy PS5, once you actually get a couple games working, that's when the long road basically goes in front of you, and you think to yourself, okay, now we need to make sure everything runs correctly. That again can take years, as we've seen on PCSX2, RPCS3, Shed PS4, and basically every other emulator out there, PlayStation or otherwise. But this does have audio, so it's going to be our first soundtrack sample. Go ahead and listen, and I'll be right back with more PlayStation 5 emulation. I mean, that's clear discernible audio coming out of a PlayStation 5 emulator, and the fact that you can even say that in 2026, let alone this early in its development, is an understatement into just how impressive and fast this stuff is actually kind of coming through. You'll see here it definitely drops down to a much lower frame rate per second. It's one of those things though, the fact that this even does anything means that you will be playing PlayStation 5 emulation at some point in time. I feel like maybe by Christmas, that's what I said in the last video, there might be one game, probably a 2D game, that's going to run at 60 frames per second or better, and you're going to be able to play it from start to finish. Because that is the other thing, it's not just getting games to run, it's getting games to run stably so that you can just sit down and enjoy them without having to worry about bugs or crashes. And that does take a very long time, because at the end of the day, emulation is amazing, but you want to stop thinking about what it's doing and just start sitting down and having fun. And that basically is a long road to get to that point in time. Think of the best emulators out there, the Duck Stations, the Dolphins, the PCSX2s, and the RPCS3s. In a game that runs perfectly, you stop thinking about the fact that you're even emulating a system and just start enjoying playing the game. And that's the fun part about stuff like this. Yes, the technology underlying the emulation is a good time. Yes, it is impressive on what all these developers do, but the end goal, at least in my opinion, is to forget that you're even emulating anything in the first place so that you just end up sitting down and enjoying a video game on non-target hardware. And that is not an easy brief to accomplish, but it is one that seems to be getting closer. Now moving over to a capture from Charlie33, again channel link below, Crisis Core Final Fantasy VII Reunion, definitely a long title. They love to just basically add new words to the existing games over on Squaresoft's side of things. You'll see the FMV sequence here is playing, and it is running at 60 frames per second, and that definitely is something that needs to get buttoned up before you can really get into the game, because so many titles will have these videos playing before you actually load into the engine. And we've seen some instances in which you can get into the game with 3D engines, as we just saw in the previous clip, but every single game is going to do something slightly different with the PlayStation 5 hardware. The APU from AMD is going to have a bunch of different functions, both on the CPU side of things as well as the GPU side of things, and just because one game will get into the game and show you 3D does not mean every game will, because that game might not utilize all the functions that aren't yet strung together in emulation. Just think of it like a kind of a Swiss Army knife. Yes, there's a bunch of tools in there, but maybe you only need to use one or two to actually get the job done, where you need to have every single tool in the Swiss Army knife running in emulation if you want every single game that utilizes 3D or 2D or any and all function calls to that GPU. They need to all be strung together before it will work 100% perfectly. And you can't see me here, but I'm using air quotes when I say perfectly, because that is still going to be a long way away. Let's do one more soundtrack sample. We're going to be listening to the music in Crisis Core here, and again, discernible audio that really doesn't seem to have much of an issue. So go ahead and listen, and I'll be right back.
Come and get it! Hey!
So yeah, PlayStation 5 emulation keeps progressing forward, but I would say right now, unless you just want to test and see how these things actually work and get things set up in anticipation of there being quote-unquote playable games, I really wouldn't spend the time to go ahead and start trying to emulate PlayStation 5 games at this point in time, because nothing is going to really work 100%. No game is going to be 100% completable. It really is kind of experimental at this point in time, but don't forget, as time goes on, that is definitely going to improve, and right now this thing seems to be speed running the development of PlayStation 5 emulation. And yes, there's two independent developers here, or two independent emulators, SharpEmu as well as KyTy PS5, and I have absolutely no idea if they're going to merge into one another at some point in time, because you always talk about that in the comments. But honestly, it seems like there's a decent amount of people working on PlayStation 5 emulation, and we're all going to be the better for it, because like I always love to say, video game emulation is video game preservation, and clearly Sony's proven they have no interest in preserving their past. But I'll see you guys next time. Hope you enjoyed the video. Bye-bye.